everyone, welcome back to my channel. Thank you for coming back to watch another video. If you haven't already, then please subscribe, as I've got lots of travel vlogs coming up. Like I spoke about in my last video, we're going to Edinburgh next weekend, and I can't wait to vlog that as our first travels. But today it is a cold, dark November evening. Winter is well and truly upon us, and the Disneyland Paris sweatshirt, my favourite sweatshirt, is out. I thought I'd do a bit of a cosy, chattier vlog today, where I'm actually going to talk you through some of my top 5 book recommendations of things that I've read in 2021. Now, I haven't got any physical books to show you. I am a Kindle reader. I absolutely love my Kindle. Unfortunately though, I can't get past a few pages each night when I read every night in bed because I am too tired at the moment. But I absolutely love reading on my Kindle. I have a Kindle Paperwhite, so it has the backlight that lights up, which is perfect for reading in bed. Although I absolutely love a paperback, holding one now feels so heavy and so cumbersome that I do just absolutely love my Kindle. I was a Kindle convert as soon as they came out, really. I track my reading on an app called Goodreads, so I know what books I've read. I rate them. I mainly need that so that when I look at a book I can check if I've already read it, because I read quite a lot that I sometimes forget what I have and haven't read. But another way I track my reading is through my bullet journal. Now, I was an avid bullet journaler throughout 2020. It really helped me with my mental health during lockdown, and I really enjoyed it as a creative outlet. With 2021, I made a good start, but I was finding that it was causing me a little bit too much stress than it was helping me. So I have put my bullet journal on hold for now, but I thought I would show you the spread that I did at the end of 2020 to sort of celebrate my reading progress. So this is the bullet journal spread that I did at the end of 2020. So you can see I read 27 books last year, and that was the total number of pages. That does take a lot to log the amount of pages that I read each day. So I did a graph of how much I read each month. So you can see that sort of the lockdown months, if we will. So coming towards the end of the year, December was the month that I read the highest, which was when I actually had COVID myself and was in isolation. So yeah, I read quite a lot in 2020, 27 books, which was probably my best. I also track how many books I've read each month, the books by genre. So the most popular genres for me last year were thrillers, psychological thrillers, and what I call contemporary fiction, so fiction about sort of modern day life. The fantasy books that I read were the Harry Potter series. I could never get on with the Harry Potter series as a child. I got obsessed with the first one because we read it to us, our teacher read it to us at school. But I never really got past The Prisoner of Azkaban. But over the last sort of year, I have read all 7 books and thoroughly enjoyed them as an adult. And then the final thing, which was probably the most shocking stat for me, was my books by gender of author. Now, I found that I read 93% of the books that I read last year were written by female authors and only 7% males. So that's something that I've actually tried quite hard to improve this year. I found that I was sort of always leaning towards female authors and not male authors as such, and most of them from the UK as well. So I have tried to branch out a little bit this year and read perhaps a wider range of authors as well. So I will show you the spread that I have started this year. I am hoping that I will be able to finish it off at some point. It is my 2021 bookshelf and reading tracker. As you can see on the bookshelf, I write in the titles of all the books that I've read this year, and on this side I colour code how many pages I have read each day. Now, as you can see, we are coming towards the end of November, so it's been quite a long time since I filled this in. But I have kept all of the information to be able to fill it in, so I'm hoping that is something that I will want to do. But I just with going back to work and full-time school again, it's just felt like too much, so I haven't at the moment. But my goal for this year was to read 25 books, which I have currently done. I'm currently reading my 26th book of 2021, so I'm really pleased that I have managed to keep up the amount of reading that I was doing last year and this year as well. So let's get cracking then on my top 5 book recommendations from this year. So one of the first books that I read this year was by one of my favourite authors, Mark Edwards. His book The Magpies is well up there in my top 5 favourite books ever. If you haven't read it, I really suggest you should. So I'm always pleased to read a new Mark Edwards when it comes out. This one was called Here to Stay. The premise of the book was that a man who marries his new wife, they hadn't known each other very long, and the wife invites her parents to stay. So he has the in-laws come to stay, and as the title suggests, here to stay. They don't ever leave, and there's lots of mysterious going-ons with these in-laws. They are the in-laws from hell, and there's lots of strange things that happen along the way that sort of slowly unravels into this really quite big mess. So that was a really good psychological thriller, was the genre of that. Like I said, I was trying to branch out to some male authors, and Mark Edwards is one that I have absolutely loved his books before, so that was quite a nice place to start. So yeah, I really recommend that if you like psychological thrillers. Like I said, it sort of slowly unravels from what seemed like an okay situation to start with, sort of snowballs and really gets quite nasty. So that was a really interesting book to read. I really enjoyed that one. I gave it 5 stars on my Goodreads, and it was one of the 25 books I have read so far this year. The second book that I wanted to recommend is another male author that I tried this year. So this was a book by Matt Haig, The Midnight Library. I had heard lots about this book and lots about Matt Haig as an author before I read it, and I was really interested on the premise of the book. So the idea of The Midnight Library is that there's a character called Nora, and it's quite evident at the start of the book she feels like nothing is really going for her in life, and she feels that if she were to end it all, that no one would really miss her. So very early on in the book you get the idea that Nora wants to commit suicide, and she goes to this place called the Midnight Library, where there's a familiar character from her past, is her school librarian. And the idea is that the Midnight Library is about living all of the lives that you could have lived had you made one different decision. And the idea of that really stuck with me, in that you always have these moments where you go, what if I had done that? I really regret not doing this at this time. And she was living all of these different lives over the course of the book, and you realise that actually, would everything be different if I had done it that way? Would my life actually be worse had I made that decision? Would it be better? You never know. So it's always that the grass is always greener aspect of it. That was really interesting to me, and it touched a lot on obviously mental health, depression, anxiety. I suffer myself with anxiety, so it was really interesting to see those themes dealt with really quite delicately in the book, and I really enjoyed Matt Haig's perspective on that. And having read the book, I then stumbled across, I started to listen to Fern Cotton's Happy Place podcast, and one of the first episodes that I saw on the list was one with Matt Haig. And having just read his book and really enjoying it, I listened to that, and it was so interesting to hear his own battles with mental health and how that has really affected his writing, and how it's really had an impact on the subjects that he wants to write about. So I found that really interesting. So yeah, that's really one that I would recommend. Since then I have put a lot of Matt Haig's books, other books, on my to be read list. So hopefully I'm going to be able to get a couple of those read in the next few months and see what I think of those as well. The next book on my list of my top 5 books of 2021 is The Turn of the Key by Ruth Ware. I was recommended and given actually a physical copy of this book by my sister, and she said that she had really enjoyed it. The concept of this one was quite modern. and quite interesting. So it was another sort of psychological thriller, and it's set in a really isolated house in Scotland. But within this isolated house, you would expect these isolated houses to sort of be stuck in the past, if you like. But this one is one fitted with a ridiculous amount of mod cons, cameras everywhere. It's like a smart house. You can tell the lights to come on. You can schedule things for the children to do. It was quite an interesting, futuristic idea. So the part of the story is the main character of the story takes on a position of being a nanny to the two children who live in this house. The parents work away quite a lot, so it was a live-in nanny position. So she takes this, and she's warned as well that the last 3 or 4 nannies that have been there have left quite quickly. So you're already interested in why is that the case. You get lots of sort of themes throughout it. You think, is there ghosts? Is this a bit of a spooky atmosphere? Is it the smart house? That's sort of that idea of Big Brother is always watching you. The children are quite weird as well. So it was really interesting to see how that one was going to develop. And there were lots of different turns that it took, which I love in a book if it always keeps me guessing. So quite a few times where I thought in my head like, I've nailed it, I know exactly what's going to happen, but it would switch so quickly that you just didn't. And the interesting thing about this book was the very first chapter, not much of a spoiler alert as it happens in the very first chapter, you know that this main character who takes on the nanny position, you know that she is in jail. So you're constantly thinking, well, why, what is it that's going to have happened? And like I said, I about 3 or 4 times throughout the course of the book thought I had absolutely nailed it. I hadn't. It took me by surprise, and I always love that when I'm sort of floored by the ending of a book. So I really, really enjoyed that one. I have got another one of Ruth Ware's books already downloaded onto my Kindle, so that's one of the ones that I'm going to read next as well. So yeah, that was a good new author find for me. So thank you for the recommendation to my sister Phoebe. Thank you very much. So the next one on my list, my 4th recommended book of 2021, was one that is a little bit different. Now I was watching a vlog actually by Lucy Wood, who I love her vlogs about what she's been reading recently. She always gives a really nice honest opinion, and I've picked up quite a lot of recommendations from watching her videos. She recommended a book called Malibu Rising by Taylor Jenkins Reid. But as she was talking about it, she mentioned the book that I read, the one that I'm about to talk about, Daisy Jones and the Six, and she said it was sort of quite an iconic book written by Taylor Jenkins Reid. So I looked a little bit into it because I thought I don't want to start with her latest book. I'd rather go back to the book that made her famous, if you like. So I looked into reading Daisy Jones and the Six, and now the way the blurb is written, it's about a band, essentially, a band from the 70s called Daisy Jones and the Six. And as I started reading it, you realise quite quickly that it's not written like your average book. It's written in a way that's like interviews with all of the members of the band. So they're not even in chapters either. They're sort of little snippets of each band member's perspective on the thing that is happening. So that's really interesting because you've got a lot of characters straight away, and you're seeing the action or the scene that's occurring. You're seeing it from all of these different perspectives, which I thought was a really novel idea, and I really liked it. So a few chapters in, I got to a part where I thought, there must be pictures of this from the 70s, like paparazzi pictures, something like that. So I googled this sort of specific moment and when it had happened, and it was at that stage that I realised Daisy Jones and the Six is not a real band. And that really astounded me, that I was so sold on this concept of this band and these characters, that then to find out that actually this is all a figment of the writer's imagination, I found mesmerising, because it was written in such a way that I was convinced that this was a real band and that these were real things that had happened. So I really liked that. I sort of admired Taylor Jenkins Reid even more after that, and the rest of the book, I was like, I cannot believe that these things didn't actually happen, that this isn't a real story. And I really, really enjoyed it. I've also recently found out as well that they Amazon Prime are making Daisy Jones and the Six into a TV series, which is very exciting. So before that comes out, I would definitely recommend reading the book, because it was really enjoyable and really different. So it's sort of the genre that it's sold as is historical fiction, which is the reason that I thought that it was real. So it was set in the 70s. I thought it was a historical fiction book about that. I probably should have realised that fiction is in the title of that. If it was real, it would be an autobiography. That's probably my mistake. But yeah, it was a really enjoyable read, and I would highly recommend it, and I'm looking forward again. I feel like Taylor Jenkins Reid is another author I've discovered this year that I would really like to read a lot more of their books. So yeah, that was my number 4 recommendation. So final recommendation from my top 5 books of 2021. Now, this was one that I feel like I was a little bit late to the party with. I feel like everybody read this in 2020. It's The Couple Next Door by Shari Lapina. This was actually bought for me from one of the children in my class as an end of year present, which I thought was so nice that she'd bought me a book. She knew that I loved reading, so that was really cute. So yeah, I had a physical copy of this one. So actually of my 5 top books, 2 of them I didn't actually read on my Kindle. But yeah, so I was a bit late to the hype with this one. I'd heard a lot about the book, just hadn't got round to reading it. Again, I really, really enjoyed it. It's another one of those books where you're not quite sure what to make of your characters. You don't know whether they're guilty or not. So the premise of this is a couple, Anne and Marco, pop next door to a dinner party at their neighbour's house, leaving a sleeping baby in the bedroom. And as you can probably guess, when they come back from the dinner party, their baby girl is missing. And you've got all of these characters involved. So you've got the couple themselves, you've got the 2 next door neighbours, and it's another one where you're sort of slowly gathering all of these pieces of information and making your opinion on who might be responsible for this. It was one that really, I felt like I was along with the detective trying to crack it myself, which I quite enjoy when I feel like I've got a role to play as I'm reading the book. So yeah, this was another one that kept me guessing. I was constantly changing my mind for who I thought was responsible. And again, just like Here to Stay, it floored me. The final resolution, if you like, the final culprit of the crime that had been committed was really surprising, and I really enjoyed it. So yeah, those were my top 5 recommended books from this year. So of the 5, 3 of them were psychological thrillers. They're probably my favourite genre of book. I find that I like the idea of always having to keep guessing, thinking that you might have got it right, turning out that you haven't got it right. So psychological thriller is probably my favourite genre. One of them was the sort of fantasy modern fiction in the Midnight Library. The fantasy section is because it's sort of going in and out of these alternate realities. And then the historical fiction of Daisy Jones and the Six. All 5 of my books in my top 5 this year were fiction. I've read mostly fiction this year. I've read a couple of autobiographies. Didn't quite make it into my top 5. But yeah, so I'm looking forward to hopefully finishing off my bullet journal spread. And I would like to do another reading summary of 2021. I'd be interested to see whether I have changed the amount of the percentage of male to female authors that I've read, or if there were perhaps some months that I read a lot more than others. I imagine in the summer I probably read quite a lot more than I have in the months that I've been at work instead. And I'll also be interested to see whether there's a bit of a wider spread on the genres that I've read this year, and I think there might be. So yeah, once I finish that spread, I'll be sure to share it with you as well. So thank you so much for watching. Please like this video and subscribe if you'd like to see more content. Next vlog that should be up should be our Edinburgh trip. We are heading there next weekend, and we're super excited to go and to share it with you as well. So please subscribe so that you are sure not to miss that next weekend. Thanks so much for watching. Bye!